And the very first thing is a store of value. Is there inflation? And if they say yes, then ask them, aren't those two things mutually exclusive? If there is inflation, it is not storing value. When it is borrowed into existence, you owe interest on that. So if you start off with $1 and you're going to owe that plus $1's worth of interest, and then you borrow the second dollar to pay that interest eventually, but now you've got $4. Go out and find a house that you want to buy. You need $1 million loan. The bank says, okay, here's the loan paper. They imagine $1 million into existence. We're going to loan you $1 million on that house. They imagine that into existence, type it into your checking account. And you look for the attributes of what is money. What does money have to be? And the very first thing is a store of value. Is there inflation? And if they say yes, then ask them, aren't those two things mutually exclusive? If there is inflation, it is not storing value. When it is borrowed into existence, you owe interest on that. So if you start off with $1 and you're going to owe that plus $1's worth of interest, and then you borrow the second dollar to pay that interest eventually, but now you've got $4. Go out and find a house that you want to buy. You need $1 million loan. The bank says, okay, here's the loan paper. They imagine $1 million into existence. We're going to loan you $1 million on that house. They imagine that into existence, type it into your checking account.
Good evening, this is PG. It dumbfounds me that these people just make all this up. The banks, the governments, they have no money except they want to run your life and run everybody's life. But they're like saying, I have $10, I'm going to loan it to you, but I'm just making it up. And we just accept it. It's just dumbfounding that we accept this. They have no money. These corporations that run your lives tell you what time you have to come in and go to work and what time you can clock out, or tell you they can throw you in jail if you don't pay the IRS. They're making it all up. And I'm dumbfounded. They're just making the whole thing up. As I listened to that intro that I had with the thumbnail, it's just like, these guys are the most deceptive people in the whole wide world. They can't run our lives. They say they have this money, even the government, and they're just making it up. Okay? They're saying they have $10 and they're going to loan it to you, but they just put it down on a piece of paper and write it out, and it's not true. They don't have a $10 gold piece, so they have no money, really, honestly. Hi, this is PG, Patriot Alley, Leah and Michelle's mom, or ResistanceChicks mom. Thank you for joining me. This is a blog that I have been reading out loud for like 3 nights in a row. Last night, I read it out last night, and I did not have any of the videos playing. I re-uploaded it today. So if you go right here where it says part 1, that was the first night. I think it was Saturday night. Then part 2 was Sunday night. I just got finished, re-edited it, make sure all the videos are playing. You see everything that I intended for you to see. And now we can start tonight on part 3. And if you'd like to follow along, you go to isaiah58ministries.blogspot.com. And the link is in the description, and you can follow along there. Excuse me. I finished yesterday's part 2. How many ounces of silver are you holding? By Peter Krauth, Gold and Silver Prices. And so tonight we have here Taylor Kenny, ITM Trading. There is no insurance that will save you. It's all con. It is highway robbery. Now when you go to some of these videos, like with Taylor right here, if you go to the description, there are all kinds of things that she wants to talk about, and she does in this video. And so I'm going to be skipping through some of those things. just to get some highlight certain parts of it. She talks about how CBDCs will track and control you. Oh, she has another one in here. It says how this is almost inevitable. It's like you have to, but there is a way to fight back. And that's what this video is about. It is fighting back because we all know that that ends in slavery.
Is a hidden truth in today's lie by those in power is that central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs, are merely digital cash. But the truth, CBDCs are far more dangerous.
Ouyang Haoyu is followed. What she buys, how she behaves is tracked and scored.
Key difference with the CBDC is that central bank will have absolute control.
They are the gateway to unprecedented government control, an all-seeing system where every transaction is tracked, logged, and rated. But the ratings won't just stop with your finances. They'll define your opportunities, where you can work, where you can go, and even how you can live your life. No, this isn't just about money, it's about control. But if this sounds too dystopian, too far-fetched to think that the United States would ever pursue such a future, think again. Right now, 134 countries, representing 98% of the global economy, are actively pursuing a CBDC.
People don't need to worry about a central bank digital currency.
Do you really believe that the US government and the elites would pass up an opportunity for such a powerful tool of control? It's those who dismiss this idea as impossible that will be left powerless and stripped of their freedoms. All it takes is one look at China to see where we could be heading, and I don't have to tell you that we're already being watched. Every online interaction monitored. Speak out against the mainstream narrative or attend a protest about government overreach, and you're labeled as a threat. But right now, the consequences are relatively mild. Increased surveillance, maybe, or as we saw in Canada, financial blacklisting, with companies the likes of GoFundMe and PayPal freezing millions meant to support the Freedom Convoy, showing just how close we are to losing our financial freedoms. But make no mistake, this is just the beginning. In China's real-life game of life, their social credit system goes far beyond simple monitoring, rewarding citizens for behaviors like donating blood and punishing citizens for behaviors like smoking or bad driving. The penalties for punishment expand to travel bans, limited job opportunities, and even the confiscation of your pet. Now imagine here in the United States how much easier it would be to implement a social credit score system if there was a CBDC. Now, this change would happen slowly at first. It would be subtle, lulling the American people in for a false sense of security. But here's how it would work. An American CBDC would be integrated with data tracking and identity systems. Oh yeah, if I haven't mentioned it yet, get ready, because the blueprint for launch includes digital identity tracking. Every transaction, whether it's a utility bill or a Christmas present, would be tracked and monitored by the Federal Reserve, creating an all-encompassing system of control. This will close with every pilot program, with every global development that happens. You can feel the opportunity shrinking, and by the time that window closes, it will already be too late. This isn't something that we're waiting and seeing if it's going to happen. It is happening now, and the time to prepare is now, because the longer you wait, the less opportunities you will have. That's why everyone should have a plan in place. If you do not already have a plan, a strategy with physical, tangible assets like gold and silver outside of this system, now is the time to do so. If you already have a plan, but you want a second opinion, that is what our team is for. Either way, give us a call. There's a number below. There's a link in the description. It is completely free to talk to one of our expert analysts and get an expert opinion. They have decades of experience in helping people just like you prepare for what's coming next. The system was never designed for you and I. It was never designed with us in mind, and it is about to get a whole lot worse. And that is why I'm so passionate about what I do on here and helping people like you you make sure that we are all prepared together, because there is strength in numbers. So the more of us who understand what's coming next, the better it is for all of us together. And again, while education is key, it is action that will truly protect you against what is coming up next.
Basically, there is no insurance that will save you. It's all con highway robbery.
The FDIC, the people responsible for the safety of your deposits, just issued a dire warning. A growing number of banks are now on the brink of insolvency. But this $364 billion crisis isn't just about bad management. No, it's a chain reaction set off by one core issue: unsustainable federal debt, the consequences of which aren't coming, they're already here, and they are accelerating. Today, we'll break down how skyrocketing federal debt has flooded the system with cash, how banks' once safe assets are now ticking time bombs, and most importantly, we'll expose how this cycle doesn't end in a soft landing, but instead is hurtling towards hyperinflation and a crash landing that no one can afford to ignore. When the federal government takes on enormous debt, say $13 trillion in the last 5 years, that debt creation does not live in a vacuum. It gets monetized. Those in power will tell you, oh, these cash injections, they're going to stabilize the economy. They're going to help the everyday American. But in reality, what ends up happening is that this cash-fueled speculation for Wall Street and the wealthy elites, meaning that the rich get richer while there's no real tangible growth. This is what we saw in the aftermath of 2008. But the difference with 2020 is that as Wall Street played its speculative games, banks were left holding an unprecedented amount of deposits. And while it might sound like the most normal thing in the world for a bank to be holding deposits, I'm going to let you in on something that feels like a secret. Banks are for-profit institutions. Do not ever forget, they do not work for you. They certainly don't work for me. They work for their shareholders and their private investors, which means that the less deposits a bank keeps on hand, the higher risk for you and for me in the entire financial system, but the more potential that bank has for profit. But this part will really blow your mind. Not a lot of people realize that when all of that government spending hit the system in 2020, at the exact same time, the Federal Reserve waived its reserve requirement ratio, meaning that banks no longer have to hold not even a single dollar of all of their depositor funds. So, of course, they gambled with your deposits. Now, a lot of the deposits were put into what they thought were safe bets, long-term treasury bonds. After all, low interest rates and government backing made these seem like a sure thing, a win-win for banks and government. Of course, that illusion of safety only stays intact if interest rates remain low and the asset remains stable. Spoiler alert, neither happened.
Committee anticipates that ongoing increases in the target range for the federal funds rate will be appropriate.
What happens when interest rates rise is bond prices fall.
It's the 10-year and out. And that's where we're seeing all the volatility.
Fast forward to today, the FDIC reports $364 billion in unrealized losses on banks' balance sheets, primarily from bonds that they dumped your deposits into, as well as commercial. Next, they print more cash. More cash means more inflation. And if you're saying, so what, who cares? It won't really impact me. No, this time will be different because government debt is already at a max and inflation is already dangerously high, meaning that this will not be a repeat of 2008. No, this time will be different and it will be much worse. Hyperinflation is not just an economic term, but a devastating reality, one where your savings, the dollars in your wallet, your retirement, everything you own is worth less at such a rapid rate that you can't even spend it fast enough as it's losing its value. During this period of time, the basic necessities of life become unaffordable, and most people will be left with nothing, leading to societal unrest, chaos, and who knows what else. But what happens when banks themselves can't even survive the hyperinflation storm? This is where bank bail-ins come into play. Unlike bailouts, where our taxpayer money was used in 2008 to bail out greedy banks, a bail-in is where banks are legally allowed to seize your deposits to make themselves whole again.
It's important that people understand they can be bailed in. They're going to be.
But I don't think you have much hope of reaching a public that doesn't have a professional need to know.
Your hard-earned cash is used to keep the financial system and institutions afloat that they ruined in the first place. And since depositors are technically unsecured creditors, well, that means that your deposits are at risk the second that confidence cracks. But even bail-ins cannot stop the inevitable. When a currency collapses and hyperinflation spirals out of control, there is only one solution in a currency's life cycle, one moment that you are leading towards that is inevitable, and that is a currency reset. A currency reset is the death of the dollar as we know it today, but it could look different depending on what they decide to do. The dollar could suddenly be valued and pegged to gold, or it could be a new digital currency that's issued. Maybe it's some combination of factors, even a reevaluation of the currency, which essentially is just lopping off zeros. Imagine that tomorrow they decree that the dollar is suddenly worth 1/10 what it was the day before. So you had 100,000 US dollars in your bank account. Well, suddenly now you wake up, it's only worth 10,000. These are all real scenarios that have happened before, and all of the warning signs from history are there that this is the outcome we are catapulting towards. The question is, will you be prepared when the reset happens? Do you want to wait and find out, or take action now? A currency reset is a process until one day it's an event. Every single day we are in that process as your dollar is worth less and less, which is why I personally sleep well at night knowing I am protected outside of the system, outside of the dollar, and I am ready so that as that process accelerates and when that event happens, I don't have to be concerned. This is because I have my strategy in place. If you are concerned or you don't have a strategy, that is what our team does. They study currency life cycles and help people prosper during times of down.
And like I said in the last video, Taylor Kennedy is trying to fill the shoes of Lynette Zhang. And Lynette Zhang was the marketer for ITM Trading. And she's 70 years old. She retired basically. And in that, she started her own company. So ITM Trading is a well-established company that Lynette worked and helped develop and establish, like with 27 years of retail. And we were partners with them for the longest time. But they have a limit, a purchasing limit. You have to buy so much. Whereas Lynette doesn't have a limit. You can buy a silver dollar. But you get the same service that you would get at ITM Trading. The difference is ITM Trading is going along kind of with the flow. Whatever happens, happens. Lynette wants to fight for her grandchildren. She wants to fight for herself. So she's more like on the fighting part of it. She is part of a group that goes state to state to try to get states to return to gold and silver and take the control out of these money launderers, these counterfeiters, these liars. They have no money to loan you. They just print it up on paper and then say, here. But they didn't have it in the first place, so they can't loan it. So we suggest you go, if you click on that link right there in the blog, ResistanceChicks.com, God's Money, it'll take you to this picture here, which is our Resistance Chicks page, your website, and you can read all about how you can go to Lynette's page, and you click here to go to Lynette Zhang Enterprises, and you can make an appointment, a Calendly, I don't know why they call that, just make an appointment with them. And it's done by phone, so you can tell them what time you're available, and then they'll get back with you. I'll click here. And you schedule an appointment with a consultant. And you can have 4, 5, 6, 7 phone calls with a consultant. We did. And other people with Resistance Chicks have gone to the net and ITM trading. And they'll talk to you till you're comfortable with what you need to do for yourself. If you have an IRA, they can turn it over, 401k, whatever you have to do to protect yourself. Like Taylor Kenny said, you'll feel safe and protected. And that's what they talk to you about, how you can feel safe and protected, because this is going to happen. And we want to go back to gold and silver, and we believe God is with us. God is not with these bad guys. Of course he's not. And one of the last videos, we had a prophecy from God, and Clement said, gold, you have to be ready. If the people are ready, gold. And you can go back to that in part 2. It's gold, and be ready and act upon it. And we can act upon it together as a community, as a nation, as individual states or individual countries, individual nations, and each state, each country, each nation doing their part to go return to honest money, which is God's money. Sorry to be long-winded. So that's FDC warns bank crisis accelerates as losses hit $364 billion. That's ITM Trading Incorporated. We don't get anything from ITM Trading. We're not connected to them. We used to. And we used to be connected, but then Lynette left, and we were there because of Lynette. And we want to fight more than just go along with the crowd, because it's just fiat dollars anyhow. This is, I'm doing a long thread on Minds, and I just copied over here to a blogger and reading out loud. PG here. What would the exchange rate for gold and silver coins be if everyone wanted to use them? Gold 15 to silver 35,000 to 40,000. That's how much gold would be. At one time, men would buy a mansion for a few gold coins. Hyperinflation, overprinting. Rafi Farber is Mises economics, just like Ron Paul. He believes in I think it's Austria economics, Mises economics.
Gold is money, period. When you are exchanging a dollar for a pack of gum or groceries or whatever, what are you exchanging? You're not exchanging a piece of paper. You're exchanging a gold substitute. You're exchanging the gold or silver value of that dollar for the goods and services that you're buying. And why must this be true? This is true now. It's true always, because of something called the monetary regression principle. The only reason you know what prices are now is because you knew what prices are yesterday. Otherwise, prices would be completely arbitrary. And if they are completely arbitrary, then there's no way to divide goods and services, and division of labor breaks down. The purpose of money is to divide goods and services according to supply and demand. Otherwise, there's no division of labor and you can't have an economy. So you have to go back in time. So the question is, how was the dollar born? And some people could say gold standard, but that's not even that's not true. The dollar was born as a silver standard, and then it was changed to a gold standard as a transfer of wealth from the middle class who owned silver to the wealthy who owned gold. But let's just say that the dollar started as a gold standard. Why? Because barter started by exchanging one thing for another thing. That's how society began, or economics began. And the thing that was most exchangeable for other things just happened to be silver and then gold later. So even now, when you're exchanging a dollar, you're exchanging a gold substitute. It happens to be a very inflated gold substitute. And we know what happens when the illusion of the dollar's value of gold, when that illusion is broken, then there's a depression, because that's what happened in 1933, right? Gold went from 21 to 35 as an admission by the government that this exchange rate is not real, and therefore we have to change it. And then you had a big, Great Depression. The real price of gold, the monetary price of gold, is what price would it be if everyone on the planet were to exchange all their dollars for gold right now? What would the price have to be? What would the exchange rate? It's not even a price, it's an exchange rate. What would the exchange rate between gold substitutes and gold have to be? And the answer is probably around $35,000, $40,000 to make everyone who wants gold, to have it. That's the monetary price. The price that we see on the futures exchange, that's the industrial price, because not everyone needs gold for industrial purposes, but everyone needs it for monetary purposes. Just they pretend that the dollar they have is gold, but not these exchange rates. The end game, we've seen it many times in history. Exactly how it's going to come to pass this time, I don't know, but I can imagine that it will be something like we've seen before, but global. What have we seen before in the end game? The end game is what the Austrian economist Ludwig von Mises calls the crack-up boom. So we know what booms are. Booms are when economic activity in fiat currency terms picks up, and it looks like everyone's rich because the spending, the GDP goes up and blah blah blah. But GDP is really just another count of the money supply, because if you increase the money supply, you're going to increase the amount of dollars that are spent in an economy. It's kind of stupid. So the crack-up boom is otherwise known as hyperinflation, when the economy speeds up the economy. It's not really the economy, it's the amount of money substitutes being circulated in an economy. Speeds up to the point where the desire to hold cash balances as money itself falls to zero. And once the desire to hold money substitutes themselves falls to zero, then people are willing to spend an infinite amount of money, or infinite amount of currency, I should say, on anything, just to get rid of it. So that's the crack-up boom. That's what we're headed for. And it doesn't matter if we're talking about central bank digital currencies or paper money or whatever. It's all the same crap. It doesn't make a difference. I mean, people make this big deal out of central bank digital currencies, and it's a big deal in the sense that it robs everyone of any privacy whatsoever. But it's all the same fiat. So when it all goes to zero, that's it. It's all dead. It's all the same. So the crack-up boom is going to be something along the lines of what happened in Weimar, what happened in Zimbabwe, or what happened in any hyperinflationary country, except everywhere all at the same time. And what happened then in Weimar, Germany, you could buy, for example, a mansion in Berlin for like 4 or 5 gold coins. So I expect the people with physical gold to be able to amass huge amounts of real resources, and that's when the purchasing power of gold and silver goes through the roof. In the initial phase, when the real breakdown happens, it's going to have to be physical, because all trust in all money substitutes will be broken. It's not like people are going to have this revelation, oh, I understand what money is now, and I get what Rafi's saying when he talks about the monetary regression principle, and they're all going to suddenly study Austrian economics and become geniuses in economic theory. That's not what's going to happen. What's going to happen is the same thing that happens in every bubble. Whether it's Bitcoin, people chase Bitcoin because it's going up. People chase this stock, Tesla, whatever, because it's going up. People are going to chase gold and silver, not because they understand what money is, because it's going up. And it's going up because this is the end game, and it's money. So people are going to try to chase it. They're going to try to get as much physical as they can. They're going to call for delivery. There's going to be a run. There's going to be, dealers going broke. They can't get supply, and there's going to be panic. And then the prices of everything are going to go way, way, way down in terms of physical gold and silver, because everyone in the world's going to want it. In the book, The Theory of Money and Credit, Mises says that we have to go back to exchanging physical coins. I don't think it's going to stay that way forever, but in the initial phases where prices are just off the wall and bonds are collapsing and this and that, then no one's going to accept anything for any of their services in return, goods and services in return, except for coins. So you're going to need some of that. Are you going to need like huge mansions full of it? No, because I don't think it's going to last forever. Until someone's going to offer to store your gold and silver for some meaningful substitute, and then substitutes will come back to life, and there will be more trustworthy stocks. It's less of a problem to have ETFs because the ETFs are just baskets of shares, and there's much less of a chance that they're cheating and not actually holding the shares that they say they hold. They probably hold it. The question is, like, what happens to mining shares when there is an end game? And what I think is going to happen, and why I advocate holding mining stocks in the first place, is that when the currency collapses, and it will collapse to zero, then the gold mining companies and silver mining companies will be practically the only companies that can pay you real dividends. How? With gold and silver certificates of their product. Because they'll have the money, and you'll be able to earn real dividends, and maybe they'll mail out certificates, and you can talk to your company and say, here's my certificate, mail me the gold, and when things settle down, eventually you'll probably be able to get it. Whereas with ETFs, I don't think so, because they're owned by banks. So you don't want to mess with those unless you're speculating on the gold price, which you can do. I just don't recommend it for an end game scenario.
Says how much are you holding, Rafi Farber? And we did this already, but I'll read out loud. Taylor Kenny, ITM trading, visual identity tracking, national ID. You, everyone, will be a slave. Visual CBDCs are coming. How long until the social credit grid controls you? Punishment and reward are worse than being canceled by social sites. Only gold and silver coins are money. The banks are not banks. The government is not a government. Read the second treatise of government. And John Locke shows you what a government is. First of all, what are we going to do? I mean, my gosh, it's like inevitable, right? Well, actually not. We just have to do what Jeremiah says. Jeremiah 6:16, return to the old ways, return to the right ways, return to the ways that are so easy, so simple, so quiet. It's inevitable that we are going to return to the old ways. There is not enough resources in the world, and there's not enough workers, and they're trying to import workers to make all the new technology. It just is impossible. The earth is limited, and the resources on the earth are limited. The only thing that we can hope for is to replenish the earth with things that naturally multiply. Human beings multiply, animals multiply, seeds multiply. And we want to have a great society, a thriving society. And the way that's done, the way America started, from the time the Pilgrims landed in 1620 until the Federal Reserve 1913, so for 300 years, America thrived because man understood the multiplication or the interest rate that God pays. You put a seed in the ground, and from that seed, it will multiply 1,000 to 2,000, even 50,000 times. A grain of wheat will produce more wheat. A grain of corn will produce more corn. A tree will produce, a seed from a tree will produce another tree. Everything multiplies. Animals, you can sometimes, when we have piglets, you can have anywhere from 7 to 24 piglets, according to what kind of pig you have. We want to invest in things that are, once you have them, they multiply themselves, like horses. Get a mom and a dad horse, put them together, and each year, or every 2 years, or almost every year, you could have a colt, another horse. Once you put the initial investment into it, then that's your interest. And that's what we should have. Instead of having a Social Security card and looking for retirement from this fake money, we should have all these animals and crops that are multiplying every year. And your children inherit what you leave them, and they start multiplying. And the Bible says take care of your parents in your old age, so then your farming that you've been doing all your life and your children take over can take care of you in your older age, because you invested in all that time of multiplying, like planting apple trees and apple orchards and pears. That's for our area. And you dug your well, and you built your own house, and you put all this effort in, and so you can retire comfortably, and you multiplied your children, so you have lots and lots of children, and you did everything the natural, normal way, according to the Declaration of Independence. The laws of nature are nature's God. So we're going to play Joel Salatin, Polyface Farm. Again, if you want to follow along, you go to Isaiah58ministries.blogspot.com, and the link is in the description, and you can read along, and you can follow these links. Addition by P.G. Ford, and moving removing woke tweets. Ford was a slave master of Americans, kicking them off their land and farms and stealing their gold and silver coins. Get that. In order to have cars by Ford, of course, Carnegie and Rockefeller and Rothschilds, okay, they were a slave master to all Americans. They took your courses. They kicked you off your lands. They kicked you off your farms. Okay, they stole the gold and silver. Seriously, God created horses for transportation. Liberty, freedom, and life come from God. When you do not have horses for transportation, you have hell on earth. Awful suffering. You think it's okay, and you think you're fine, and you think you're happy, but you have no idea what you're missing. If you only knew the peace that you are missing and the love that you're missing. Most Americans are very, very lonely and isolated. You're missing family. You're missing togetherness. You're missing community. You're missing relationship with God and fellowship with other people who love God. You're missing high moral standards. There's so much you're missing. You don't even know it. So that's how you have hell on earth. You have socialism, communism, and collectivism with no freedom. So you really have no freedoms whatsoever. So I'm going to play Joel Salatin here.
To have proper ideal carbon composting ratio, you're looking for somewhere between 25 and 30 to 1. The CN ratio, carbon to nitrogen, the carbon's always on the left and the nitrogen's always on the right in the ratio. So about 25 to 30 carbon to 1 nitrogen is the optimal amount. So, if you watch composting videos, and if you go on a composting workshop, you've got your your greens and your browns and your moisture and all this, and you're trying to mix it all up. And so as we think about this carbonaceous diaper, where the sweet spot of not having smell, of having enough carbon, but not so much carbon that you're wasting carbon. You don't want to waste carbon, but you need enough carbon, is around 25 to 30 to 1. If you don't have enough carbon, you're going to get odors. And that's one of the nicest things. People always ask me, well, how am I going to know that it's time to put in more carbon, whatever? Trust me, you'll know. Follow your nose. Follow your nose will tell you. And if your nose is telling you, we don't have enough carbon, then you add carbon. And so this whole process is, yes, there's science to it, but there's also art to it. So there's some objective, empirical stuff, there's a lot of subjective. And all I can say is that as you start down here, you'll start getting a feel for it. The critical thing to understand is that if you're putting in a low carbon material, because what's coming out of the back end of the cow is so high in nitrogen, it's going to take a lot more material to soak up, to keep that CN ratio at 25 or 30 to 1. If you're starting with a carbon base of material that's a low carbon ratio. High carbon ratio doesn't take as much material. But that doesn't mean you don't want to use a low carbon. It just means you have to be aware that maintaining that CN ratio is going to be different with different kind of properties. So let's just drill down on some of these carbon sources and think about the differences. One is sawdust. Sawdust is 500 to 1. Why? Because sawdust only comes from the stem of a tree. Generally, when you get sawdust, you're milling lumber. You're not milling twigs and little leaves. You're in the stem of the tree. So that's kind of the highest CN ratio, 500 to 1. Wood chips without leaves are about 300 to 1. The beauty of that is you're getting a lot of bark. You're getting a lot of little twigs and buds and the stems of plants. And then as you move with chips with leaves, then you're moving more like to 200 to 1. Especially, if it's a deciduous tree and you've got a lot of, green leaves wrapped up in it. So you're in a 200 to 1. Straw is about 150 to 1. Junk hay, so you get some old junky, moldy, rained on, whatever, junky hay is going to be about 35 to 1. Now you see, at 35 to 1, you're approaching that magic 30 to 1 ratio, which is why something like really high quality hay, like alfalfa hay, if you just spray water on it, it'll compost right in the bale, right? Because it's about 30-to-1 C/N ratio sitting in the bale. Then leaves, like deciduous leaves, like you'd get from a municipal leaf dump. A lot of cities are vacuuming up leaves, and they've got a lot of landscape debris and leaf material, especially in the fall when they're vacuuming up leaves on the edge of the road that people have swept up. Those leaves are about 35-to-1, so they're about like junk hay. As you look at these different C/N ratios, you got to realize that there's going to be a different volume of material you're going to use throughout the process. Now, each of these materials also has a different property in its ability to compact, or how it fits together in the carbonaceous diaper itself. For example, sawdust is fairly heavy, and so it tends to get pretty tight. It just binds together tightly. Wood chips, because they're bigger pieces and they're very friable, that tends to stay the loosest of all of them. When you start getting into your hay or straw, then you get these long fibers and they bind together, and you get this kind of web. It's not quite as absorptive, and it mats together. Anybody that's ever tried to, if you ever tried to shovel out, straw bedding from something and the fibers, I mean, it's almost impossible to get them to break loose. And so you get this mat within. And so the compaction's really different in the different properties. If you use straw, and there's certainly plenty of times when you want to use straw, you always want it to be rained on before you use it, because that breaks that waxy outer hydrophobic coating on straw. And so whatever source of carbon you can either find or create, just realize that the carbons are different, and it's going to take different volumes and different types, and they're going to act differently.
So the channel is called Farm Like a Lunatic with Joel Salatin, Proper Carbon Ratios for Composting, Carbonaceous Diaper, Joel Salatin. Now on the other side, what you'll hear is we want zero carbon. Those are people who are genocidists. They believe in genocide. They're part of the overpopulation when there is no such thing. And they want to get the earth down to like 500 million people. So they want to kill everybody off. And so they, of course, when they say they want zero carbon, they want zero people, because your trees are based on carbon. The human beings, we have to have carbon dioxide to breathe. I mean, it's a cycle between oxygen and carbon dioxide, and the trees put off the oxygen, they take in the carbon dioxide. And so we all are carbon-based creatures, and all life is carbon-based. So when they say zero, they're talking about their genocide occult. That's their religion. And you really don't want to have a part of it. And so I use this one of Joel Salatin to talk about how to build up carbon, how to make carbon, how to use carbon, because he's talking about composting. Then you add compost to your soil, and then you get lots and lots of fruits, vegetables, and it just makes a lot of growth. So you have a huge harvest. So the opposite, I just wanted to give the other side of your CBD seeds and all this. It's cold, it's demonic. See how when they talk about the CBD seed, and even your fiat dollar is cold, it's demonic. Whereas when you're working with your hands, there's love involved, there's families involved, there's God involved, there's a lot of love involved, there's a lot of warmth involved, there's a lot of life involved. And I'm talking about warmth in the middle of a freeze outside, but we can be warm inside. And apple trees and fruit trees need the freeze, especially where we're at in Claremont County in Ohio. We used to be known as the fruit capital of the world, actually, and especially United States of America, before cars and horses and stuff, because we have a perfect environment for fruit trees and for fruit here. So we need to know the right way of doing things that we might stand against. Lynette Zhang says, how many times can we be lied to when you don't know the truth? And so I was sharing Joel because I'm sharing the truth with you, because you could believe their lies because you don't know the truth, that we all are based on carbon. And Mike Adams says this all the time, over and over and over again. They're basically trying to kill everything that is carbon-based off, to kill off life, basically. PG here, Poor Richard's Almanac money. Getting your needs met, seeking to be wealthy is easy. A greedy heart will get you that. Take time and think everything through with the Holy Spirit's help. God will help you. Doing this made Benjamin Franklin wealthy and known worldwide. Benjamin Franklin took time to think everything through, and that's how made him wealthy and worldwide. You can easily be rich, just become a liar and a thief and follow the greed of your heart. But if you want to be really truly wise, you get close to God, and just like Solomon, not worldly wise, not wise in science, the internet, computers, or machines, not wise in manipulating, cunning, and conning, and controlling, otherwise it's called witchcraft. But the salvation of your soul from rage and anger, being mad. I found out recently that when they say you're really mad, you really are insane. When you get mad, you have gone crazy. You really have gone insane. You become a person of violence and strife. That means you have lost your mind. But when you seek godly, divine, heavenly Christ wisdom, Matthew 6:33, but seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. So I'm going to wrap up the blog here tonight. 2 Chronicles 1:11-12, because your greatest desire is to help your people, and you do not ask for wealth or riches, fame, or even the death of your enemies or a long life, but rather you ask for wisdom and knowledge to properly govern my people. I will certainly give you the wisdom and knowledge you requested, but I'll also give you wealth and riches and fame such as no other king has had before you or will ever have in the future. The 10th Amendment Center, this is what God told Solomon, and that's what the picture says. God said to Solomon, because Solomon, God said, ask me anything and I'll give it to you, and that Solomon asked for wisdom. He wanted to rule well. How can you be a good ruler? And you need God's help to be a good ruler. Now, 10th Amendment Center gets lots and lots of good wisdom, not of themselves, but they go back to our founding fathers who sought God daily, and we got this great country because they did seek God. They sought the wisdom that comes from God, like Solomon did, to be a good country, to be good leaders, to be good governance, just like Solomon wanted to do.
1732 at just 27 years of age. Man, if I was on it at 27, I like to think back at this. He was a pretty incredible dude. Incredible young man. Benjamin Franklin published the first edition of Poor Richard's Almanac. It gave him all kinds of wealth and fame in the years to follow, and it played a big part in elevating him to the status of what he's known as around the world by many people, the first American. The almanac, Mike points out, was published under a pseudonym, Richard Saunders, and was a source of many pithy insights on timeless subjects related to human nature, many of which can be applied to government and the principles of liberty today. Now, Benjamin Franklin, he saw this as kind of a tool, a vehicle for education, and maybe that developed over the years. How can you be certain how much the thing's going to sell? And it did sell out pretty quickly. I'll get to that in just a moment. But he did see this as kind of a combination of things that were entertaining, instructional, but a way to impart wisdom on the general public. And he discussed this in his autobiography years later. He said, I endeavored to make it both entertaining and useful. And observing that it was generally read, scarce any neighborhood in the province being without it, I considered it as a proper vehicle for conveying instruction among the common people who bought scarcely any other books. This was a man who understood how to talk to the common man. And that's kind of the persona that his pseudonym, Richard Saunders, used. So it was really easy to understand, really easy for people to think about and grasp. And they loved it. They bought it in huge numbers, at least at the time. It was first mentioned in the Pennsylvania Gazette, which was also Franklin's publication, on December 19th, 1732, as just published. I find many places say, oh, today in history, December 29th, but it wasn't actually released at that point. And on December 28th, it was announced for sale, again in the Gazette, with this: just published for 1733. Poor Richard, an almanac containing lunations, eclipses, planet motions and aspects, weather, sun and moon's rising and setting, high water, etc. Besides many pleasant and witty verses, jests, and sayings. Now, there are a bunch of timeless quotes which Franklin called either sayings or proverbs over the years in just his first issue. And here's a handful that I love. Distrust and caution are the parents of security. If we want to be secure in our person, our property, our liberty, of course we have to distrust anyone who has the power to violate it. He said, innocence is its own defense. Man, that's so good. And of course, he that lies down with dogs shall rise up with fleas. So if you associate with the garbage, you're going to have it all over you. And this one may be my favorite, for at least from that first edition. And I think it applies to government more than ever today. Anoint a villain and he'll stab you. Stab him and he'll anoint you. Some of these are really, really just great. I really appreciate them. Now, he did kick it off in that first edition with a kind of an introduction explaining in this kind of folksy way as Richard Saunders, which was the pseudonym, why he was publishing a thing. And of course, he says it's because he was poor and he needed to make some money, or his wife was going to be kind of upset. He basically started with this: courteous reader, I might in this place attempt to gain thy favor by declaring that I write almanacs with no other view than that of the public good. But in this I should not be sincere. And men are nowadays too wise to be deceived by pretenses, how specious whatsoever. I wish they were too wise not to be deceived today, but that's a different story. Franklin continued, the plain truth of the matter is, I am excessive poor, and my wife, good woman, is, I tell her, excessive proud. And he goes on to tell the story that she basically was saying, stop wasting your time ruminating about philosophical things and bring home some bacon. You gotta make some money. Otherwise, man, you're gonna run into some problems. So this put his pithiness on full display right in the first sentences. And so he did actually sell out pretty quickly. I think the first run of it sold out in 2 days. And then he did 3 more runs of it in that first year, and they all sold out within days as well. And he recalled this in his autobiography as well. He said, it accordingly came to be in such demand that I reaped considerable profit from it, vending annually near 10,000 copies. Now, 10,000 copies at the time, especially in the 1730s and 40s, this was a huge number, and he made a lot of money out of this as well. Now, there are a lot of common sayings. If you've never heard of Poor Richard's Almanac, there are many sayings that we think are just part of American culture today, which were either created by Franklin or popularized by him in the almanac. Things like haste makes waste, or early to bed, early to rise, makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. There's a bunch of them like that. Maybe penny saved, penny earned as well. But over the years, he also hit on a number of themes that focused heavily on self-reliance and frugality. Franklin was a big believer that the more frugal you are, the more self-reliant you are, the more that you can live freely and happily in your life. You're never tied down to requiring other people to protect and save you at all times. But he also focused heavily on distrust of those in power, people with power, and warnings about corruption and folly. Now, here's just a handful of some of my favorite quotes along those lines, like this one. The greatest monarch on the proudest throne is obliged to sit upon his own arse. Or he that cannot obey cannot command. The way I read that is those who are basically given the duty of following an oath to the Constitution, if they can't stay in line with it, they have no right to be in a position of power whatsoever. That's my take on it. Whether Franklin would agree, I mean, I'm hoping he would. But he put it like this: you may give a man an office, but you cannot give him discretion. And one more here, the one that I started out with, which I think is absolutely timeless, a maxim about human nature. And it's a reminder that we can't trust anyone with power to endanger our liberty, because they're all wolves when they're at the top of the largest government, largest empire in history, especially. He said the wolf sheds his coat once a year, his disposition never. Now, if you're familiar with Poor Richard's, you may have already read that many of these quotes were not original to Benjamin Franklin. And he, over the years in various editions of his almanac, made it very clear, like, oh yeah, I've kind of basically jacked these from other people, but he gave it his own twist, his own context. He took some things that may have been heard in the past and made them very popular. Meharry puts it like this in his article: very few of the sayings in Poor Richard's almanac were original to Benjamin Franklin. Instead, he was a master of compiling and revising things that he found in other English anthologies, and I'm certain that he found some in French as well, maybe. But as Charles Meister, Mike writes, described it in his paper, Franklin as a proverb stylist, he delighted his readers because of the way he carefully selected and skillfully revised the wise sayings and epigrams, eliminating superfluous words, smoothing and balancing awkward phrases, replacing vague and meaningless generalities with his own specific, sharp, and homey terms. Probably something I definitely really need to learn to do better myself, and maybe we all can do this. The better that we can communicate the principles that we believe in, the better that we can communicate in ways that people can appreciate or are interested in, the more we're going to couple of bucks of that dirty government fiat, please consider throwing it our way over at 10th of Franklin's Poor Richard's Almanac. I read through all of these in the last couple of weeks, and it was really kind of fun. It was a nice break from some of the deeper reading that I do, but it also, some of these really make you pause and think, like this one. Who is wise? He that learns from everyone. Who is powerful? He that governs his passions. Who is rich? He that is content. And who is that? Nobody. And this one last one, I think really should be my New Year's resolution every single year. And maybe if I get to that day, you know, when people stop going to the gym and things like that, and I forget about it, maybe this will be a good reminder near the end of the year, every single year. It would certainly be something that, man, it fits my mold, and it really, really, well, hopefully you'll feel it the way I do. Be at war with your vices, at peace with your neighbors, and let every year find you a better man. So that's definitely my New Year's resolution for 2025, and I'm going to put it out there that it really should be my New Year's resolution.
But 10th Amendment Center has great information if you want to know the truth and not be deceived. Because it's easy to deceive people when they don't know the truth. And the Founding Fathers sought the truth in everything. PG here, thus saith the Lord, I created this land for horses. This is a word the Lord gave me a long time ago. This is a confirmation for all men. Women are attracted to cowboys. I just put that in there just to be fun. God told me I created the land for horses. Horses are transportation. Cars are not from God, but made and created by evil men that enslave men to profit themselves, causing all men to fall into sin. Criminals, gangsters, and Satanists did this out of their sinful hearts full of greed and sin. Men given into diverse temptation. Steve Young horsemanship. Now, one thing about this is I'm trying to stress to everybody, you're going to go back to the old ways no matter what. There's no way you can keep making cars. There's no way you can keep using all the planet's resources up. They run out. They're limited. We have to go with things that are not limited in order to thrive, in order for future generations, in order for the earth to be here another 6,000 years. And God will see to it. And you can either work with God and have his help with going back to natural, normal nature and nature's way things are, or you can fight God. And that's what the evil men are doing. They're fighting God. Trying to go to Mars is fighting God. I mean, look what God did to the Tower of Babel, because men were trying to go to make a tower to the heavens. And here they want to go out of the atmosphere even. So what's God going to do these people? I mean, it's not a good thing to try and fight God. But this is a little thing I made up from something. This guy, he's Steve Young. He's horseman. I watch these shows like this to learn how to work with horses. Since the Lord gave me this, you got to learn about them to order work with them. And he fixes horses that are kind of broken or something's wrong with them. He's like a horse whisperer. But he said this on his show the other day, and I'm like, oh my gosh. A man after my own heart. Well, after God's heart.
Here's my little thought here. Horses used to be used. Horses were a massive part of human existence and power. And like, they're more pets now really and to enjoy, but I can see with the way fossil fuels might be running out, the way everything's going, I got a feeling we're going to all start having horses as our partners to use as horsepower for a reason again. And this little clip here will show you what it was like.
There are no cars, it's all horse and buggies. That's the normal way to do things. Natural way to do it.
Not that too long ago. So we best all start learning how to get with horses again and not just use them as pets. How to really get them to want to work for us, because I can see that happening again. So yeah, that's about it now. That's definitely it. I hope you enjoyed this.
And for our friends Hilton and Brit Boz and people in the UK, that man lives there. He's in Wales. He has his channel is right there from Wales. So you might even know him and seen his channel already. So this is the last one for the night. Squeezing silver gold in 2025. Fiat is hooked to gold ultimately. Now, what's curious about this is at the very end of he always does like a 20-minute one, but he actually did a lot longer one this Friday, and he used the same video I used earlier at the opening of my blog. He's using the exact same video of Chris Marcus and Rick Rule. Robert Farmer used a lot of these little things here.
Is there. And we weren't big buyers.
So I have just a little bit I want to show here.
We begin from where spot gold started this year, 2025. Internationally, bank analysts are still banging the table for $3,000 an ounce gold. Have a listen as he runs through medium-term minutia for his call.
So from our perspective, there definitely is a pathway to 3,000. Our end of year 2025 target for gold is 2,900 per troy ounce, so a smidge off that 3,000 number. Look.
Technically speaking, for all the lower 70s spot GSR shot callers, you're going to want to see 91 hold and not get broken to the upside. Industrial silver usage continues breaking records in terms of troy ounces used in myriad inputs, from solar cells to cell phones to cars, and hundreds of other industrial uses for silver that continue improving the quality of our modern day lives. A healthy bid for silver higher in China than the Western world continues, reflecting the fact that they need physical silver to continue pumping out consumer items like world-leading car and solar panel production. Yet for brick-and-mortar street-level dealers in the United States of America, we're seeing signs that items which were once circulating money are now often being refined back into purer forms to help better meet ongoing 395 demand from industrial silver users and silver bullion investors alike globally.
Hey folks, what's up? This is Brian Kuzmar with Commercial Rare Coins and Precious Metals in beautiful Lauderdale by the Sea. Something a little different here today that I wanted to do. I haven't done a video for a little bit. The video is, where do these great products that you buy, 100-ounce bars, Silver Eagles, all the modern products you buy, 10-ounce bars, which I'm going to grab one right here, all kinds of cool stuff like that, happens to be a Royal Canadian Mint bar. Where does a lot of that stuff come from besides mining? Well, a lot of it comes from the scrap industry. Less and less every year, but I wanted to kind of show you what we do here. And a lot of your silver comes from scrap, or did in the past. Again, not as much as we currently, or not as much as we did in the past, but a lot of your silver would come from scrap materials like this. Now, this is what we call flatware in the industry. There just happens to be a lot of flatware in this 55-gallon drum. We're going to kind of show you some other products that we also do, which is get scrap, which is a lot of foreign silver coins. I'm going to kind of do this for you right here, and we'll pour that in here. And this stuff is things that we buy from other dealers mostly, especially the flatware stuff. The flatware, and I'm going to point down here and show you hollowware. And it's on the floor for a reason, because before we put it in the barrel, we typically smash it, and I'll show you that in a moment. But this is where a lot of the scrap metals that people sell to coin shops and jewelry stores and antique stores and estates and things, this is where it ends up in 55-gallon drums, and it gets turned into bars, 100-ounce bars, 1,000-ounce bars for industry. These happen to be Canadian silver dollars. Now, some of people are probably saying, oh my God, I can't believe you're melting Canadian silver dollars. Well, we do, and the problem is that nobody buys them. There's no premium for these whatsoever, and the bullion market has slowed down quite a bit. That there's not a lot of retail buyers out for this stuff. Let's kind of pull up a few more bags here. I think between these three bags, that probably represents 700 and 750 ounces, just the bag I poured in there, and the bag that you're looking at right now. Let me kind of cut that one open real quick, and let's see what's in there. Again, this is what I do on a daily basis. I don't necessarily do all this cutting and pouring work, but as you can see, I don't mind getting my hand dirty. And here we go. More Canadian, it looks like 800 Canadian. And so we've got flatware, we've got coinage down there. And again, what I was telling you is a lot of hollowware. Less and less every year. If you look down here, you'll see that, you know, we got hollowware, and to get it into a barrel, you know, a lot of times we'll, pardon the noise here, and those are pretty easy to do, but it really has to be done, because it's really all about getting as much in a barrel as you can to effectively make it worth shipping and all that stuff, and that's a little heavier gauge. Teapots, well, there goes Grandma's teapot, but I don't need to do too much of that to show you where this stuff goes. It goes into the barrel and turned into silver bars, silver coins, and I would say as recently, the problem is that we don't have a lot of silver sales right now, so I think a vast majority of the stuff that I got in this drum is going to end up in 1,000-ounce bars, or in the industry, or inside your car. And I know it sounds funny, but Grandma's silver service, you know, Aunt Betty's hollowware, you know, her tray from her table that she used to put nuts or bananas in, or whatever it was, is going to end up in the back of or inside somebody's car. It's going to be a component in someone's car that's made out of silver. It's going to be a battery or something like that. So that's where this stuff ends up, folks. I just kind of want to give you a little lowdown, and as you can see, it's not limited to just that kind of stuff. You know, Franklin Mint coinage. If you look down there, you'll see candlesticks and all that stuff. But the problem with this stuff too is, again, you got to crush it before you get it into the barrel. So there is some work to doing this. This is not, people say, well, boy, what a great job. It's a white-collar job. You don't have to do any labor. Trust me, we do. And another thing here, these barrels, probably by the time we get done filling these barrels up, and I'll kind of shake this if I can. That's nearing probably 500 pounds pretty soon. That's probably about 450 pounds. The barrels weigh about, what, 30, 40 pounds or something like that, the steel barrels. So that's about 50 pounds of barrel, and excuse the noise there. And obviously you can tell it never ends. We get a lot of this stuff in, but don't be mistaken. There was a time a couple years ago in the past where we would have 2 barrels sitting here, and we were constantly getting barrels in and out. The scrap business in the United States has slowed down dramatically, and if you haven't noticed that, you probably noticed that even with gold prices way up, you haven't seen the buy it now guys that we've always seen in the past. But that's pretty much it for that, folks. I just kind of wanted to explain this little situation of what we do, and where your silver bars may come from, and where the silver in your car, where the silver in your batteries and your devices may come from as well. It's this kind of stuff.
It's not only older 80% junk silver Canadian coins that get refined. In the late 2010s, the silver bullion market was so slow that we heard of large amounts of old US 90% silver coins being sold for scrap at the time, as dealers needed to find ways to turn some profit in the face of next to no demand at the time. Price premium charts for 90% US silver coinage since the 2008 global financial crisis basically illustrate that there have been about 5 time frames of premium spikes for 90% silver coinage over the last 15 years. Of course, during those time frames, 90% silver coin turnover and often end up in new investor hands as opposed to being refined into 1,000 ounce industrial silver bars or other silver bullion items. But to his point about silver recycling on the street level being lower than it once was, just over 170 million ounces of silver supply came via annual recycling of silver since the COVID 2020 boost in bullion and precious metals interest. This is still far from the typical over 250 million an ounce of silver being recycled back during the 2011 run to 50 an ounce, and spot price points akin to what are being projected by many bank desks for this year, 2025, for silver. Of course, now in the mid-2020s, global demand for silver is up over 200 million ounces or more per year, and recycling does not appear to be able to make up for ongoing annual market deficit shortfalls. Now looking backwards further to the first half of this decade in the silver space, specifically the Q1 2021 silver squeeze Reddit phenomenon. Chris Marcus of Arcadia Economics, in the middle of last month, December 2024, had Rick Rule onto his show, the former president and chief executive of Sprott US, to speak about his experience managing closed-end silver ETF fund PSLV, which had large capital inflows during the early 2020s. Listen to Rick as he speaks to how thin the market was and likely still remains, awaiting the next inflow.
So it's all about the silver squeeze, which is the title of the blog. The silver squeeze was like from 2021 to 2025, and Rick Rule stated it would take 5 years, so this is like the 5th year, and it was in February of 2021, and January is like January 30th, because I know it specifically because I was a part of it, and Leah and Michelle were a part of it. We were all a part of it, and Alex Jones is a part of it. And this guy said we were so close. We were just very, very close. And so I think when Kim Clement comes down to his prophecy here with Amanda Grace and Bo Pony, what they got here, the python, the silver, the gold, the strangulation, all of it, the Lord has spoken to me personally. I saw a python on my chest once, and then last year, Kim Clement said people were going to say, I can't breathe, I feel like I'm dying, and that happened to me last year. The Lord told me to use gold and silver, but basically gold he told me in 1987, and then recently, I don't remember what year it was, he said silver, with silver. So then in Bo's presentation with Clement, here it is. Miracles happen, and that's it's all James chapter 5 in James. If we confess that we counterfeited money and repent and turn from it, God will hear our prayers and answer our prayers, and we'll have many, many miracles, because we'll have many, many miracles. Why do I feel like I cannot breathe and feel like I'm dying? That happened to me last year. He talks about gold. This is a prophecy of Kim Clement. I've been through all of this myself. I've heard these things myself. I've had it happen to me myself. I saw the spirit. I did a blog on all of this. So each one of these I have done a blog on. But in the past. And then it was like, oh my gosh, I put it all together. I did a blog on God, a dream I had with this. And on my dream, there were two men passing a ball back and forth, like a baseball, back and forth. And then one died. And because one died, the other one died, because they were codependent. And that's the Democratic and Republican Party. The Democratic and Republican Party. They're one party. They're dependent on each other. Symbiotic relationship. And when one dies, like the Democratic Party, or they think they killed the Republican Party, whichever one they think they've killed, one dies, the other dies. And in my dream, I'm like, oh my gosh. I inherited this huge chest, just like you see right there in my dream. But in my dream, it had two keys on top, and it took two laws of God. Took two lawyers to unlock it. And then we all wanted to know what was in it. We opened it up, and oh my gosh, there's real gold coins in there. And it was more like the treasure of that man smashing all that silver. There was a lot of gold plates and teacups and teapots and things like that, plus the gold coins. And, you know, like you see a treasure chest with pearls and things like that in there too. And it's like, I dreamed this, and like I inherited it all. And then I saw this, and I was like, oh my gosh. So this prophecy fits so much of what I've been saying in blogs for years. I started writing blogs, gosh, I think in 2007, 2008. And when there was a MySpace, I would write things. I wait on the Lord to give me a word, and then I put out what the Lord was giving me. So like everything they said, Kim Clement had said, the Lord has already told me. I did not get the resurrection. I got the breath of life. Like, you know, when somebody gives somebody mouth resuscitation. I got the word resuscitation. That God's going to breathe life back into America. It'll be a resuscitation. And the spirit of Pythos is a strangulation, but is going to die. And so many people, I felt like it would be this month because of the silver squeeze. 5 years, like Rick Roll said, it would take about 5 years. And so I'm ending the blog with this title of SD Bullion. This is where we've bought all our gold and silver before we met Lynette or did anything with IDM trading. They're an honest company. They would sell you small amounts, like we would buy junk gold and we junk silver that guy was throwing out. We bought it all because that's what the Lord told me to buy. And the Lord tells you to buy what they call junk, which isn't junk at all. It's real money. They're melting down real money and put it in computers. You don't put it in computers or TVs or whatever and batteries. That's your money. That's your freedom. That's your liberty. You don't trash it and put it in something junk that's actually destroying your life and destroying your brain. The more you use your computer, the more you use cars, the dumber you get. As actually is true. It's not just that it's not that they just dumbed you down in school. You're not using your whole brain. When you have horses and you have a farm, you have to use your whole brain. And animals and crops and a big, huge family. You have to use your whole brain. And the less you become human, the less human you are, the less children, the less you multiply, the less you do things for yourself, the less you hang your clothes out to dry, the less you do your own wash by hand or with a ring or whatever, the less human you become. And you're just a robot. You're just a tool. You're just what they call everybody a useless eater. You have no purpose on this earth anymore. But the closer you get to God, the more you multiply, the more you do things the natural, normal way. according to the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, the more you do things according to the Bible, the Christian way, the right way, the more you do things out of the community like the Amish or the Mennonites or those who do not use electricity, the more intelligent you are, the more peace you have, more relaxed you are, more healthy you are. And that's the goal. You don't have much of a life if you don't have companionship, because people are so lonely. We did a bicycle trip in 2003, and every time we stopped at nighttime, we found the loneliest people. And they couldn't wait to help us, like let us stay the night in their backyard in a camp and camp out or whatever. They couldn't wait. People are so lonely. And you lost so much of your life that's to be enjoyed. And the less children you have, the lonelier you are. And people bought into this overpopulation when there was no such thing. There's so much land you just can't imagine. God made so much for everybody. You could never run out of the things that naturally multiply. You'll never run out of earth to live on, no matter how many people multiply on the earth. You'll never run out of water. You'll never run out of anything. In the 60s, they went through all this conservation stuff. You got to save water. You got to save this. It's all lies. It's all lies. They made this all up. So I hope you get a lot out of this blog, and it's about the gold, Silver Squeeze 2021 and 2025. And when people get the word, like Kim Clement said, when people get the word of gold and they get the understanding and you start buying gold, you start buying silver, the people's power is to be honest. And so we have gold, we have silver that we can loan you, and it would be a real loan. It's not made out of thin air. And we get all the power. We have all the control. We have all the authority. And we take it from the counterfeiters and those who just print it out of thin air. They have no right to do it. God's not with them. It's all the devil. But we have all God's with us to be our own banks. I saw a vision of Milford where I live. We have 3 banks, and our gold's in the 3 banks. And we all work together as a community in the spirit of the Lord. Right now, the spirit everybody's in is the spirit of the world, or satanic, demonic spirit with the internet and everything. There's a spirit of the Lord that we can all walk in. I've seen this in many visions. And the reason people get married is men ask women to carry their children. And that's what a marriage is all about. And I saw one woman in my past that really just hurt our family. Said the Lord basically said she had to die because she refused to have children, and she rebelled against God, and she wanted to do all this evil, bootleg liquor, and be a man. And basically the word the Lord gave me: you live like a man, you're going to die like a man. And women and men have to realize that's what they're called to do, to multiply each other and their own families. I think of the Pilgrims, these 2 young people who were I don't know, born on the Mayflower or whatever. They got married. They had like 10, 11, 12 children. And a lot of those people with Pilgrims lived till 70, 80, 90 years old. They did not die young like you've been told. And they had wonderful, wonderful lives working together as a community. So turn to God. Get your life right with God. That's how I started the blog out here. And Jesus told me about having horses and just going back to the old way of doing things. And that's basically the black horse of Revelation. And that's the silver dime and farming and horses. And you start doing those 2 things, farming, horses, and using silver dimes. And you're going to have more of a blessed life. And you'll find the wisdom that Benjamin Franklin had. Real true wisdom, and that's where real wealth and real fame and more fortune and real happiness, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness comes from. So this is PG signing off.
And you look for the attributes of what is money. What does money have to be? And the very first thing is a store of value. Is there inflation? And if they say yes, then ask them, aren't those two things mutually exclusive? If there is inflation, it is not storing value. When it is borrowed into existence, you owe interest on that. So if you start off with $1 and you're going to owe that plus $1's worth of interest, and then you borrow the second dollar to pay that interest eventually, but now you've got $4. Go out and find a house that you want to buy. You need $1 million loan. The bank says, okay, here's the loan paper. They imagine $1 million into existence. We're going to loan you $1 million on that house. They imagine that into existence, type it into your checking account. And you look for the attributes of what is money. What does money have to be? And the very first thing is a store of value. Is there inflation? And if they say yes, then ask them, aren't those two things mutually exclusive? If there is inflation, it is not storing value. When it is borrowed into existence, you owe interest on that. So if you start off with $1 and you're going to owe that plus $1's worth of interest, and then you borrow the second dollar to pay that interest eventually,
There's about 1,200 pages of some of the most inspiring history, foundations of government, and just about every issue under the sun that's addressed from both a biblical perspective and from the perspective of the founders who basically laid down the foundation for this nation. They had an incredible desire to see freedom for everyone. It's the first time you had elites of the world that were breaking from the world system and saying, you know what? This is not just for us. This is for the collective common man. And they laid down a foundation that would allow that to be possible. I think what's in the Founders Bible is the kind of time-tested wisdom and truth. It comes out of, David Barton is our signature historian. He's got a vault of original source documents that's second only to the Library of Congress.
Wow.
We weren't crazy that it's just, I want you to do the Founders Bible. And I'm going like, what's that? And he says, it's everything that you've been seeing and been inspired by, but feathered throughout. I said, he said, I want people to know my purpose for this nation as a light unto the nations. This is not about some rah America thing. This is about God's desire for freedom, liberty for the common man. And but we have a good 20,000 of the hardcovers, and I have the leather soft and the heirloom edition. It's all the same interiors. They're just different bindings, but they can order them and we can get them out. But if we don't actually understand the contract that we have kind of with God and with each other, we're never going to live it.